Capablanca was a great tactician. How else could you become world champion, right? We will now look at the end of his game versus Mattison, which was played in Carlsbad 1929. In this position, it is Capablanca, white, to move. Now let's first look at the position and compare the armies. We can see that white has the bishop pair. And both bishops are very nicely placed and have strong diagonals pointing all the way into black's camp. Especially this bishop here on f3 is attacking no less than 1, 2, 3 black pieces in his way. Also the bishop here on d8 might come to d6, where it would hit both queen and rook. So these two bishops are posing a very serious threat to the black position. Now this knight here on g5 is also nice, you know. It is hovering over black's king here on g8, and it is attacking all these vital white squares here. Last but not least, white also has very active heavy pieces. Especially the rooks here and on the b file are very strong. They are in open files, and in combination with the bishop on d6 here, this rook from d1 could become very strong, of course, and this rook from b1 might eventually attack the black pieces here from the side. Okay, now that is a beautiful melee of arrows and colors, but it very clearly indicates that white has very strong pressure. Okay, on the other hand, if we look at black's position, we can see that, and I will, let's again use green, that he does not have the bishop pair, that both his rooks are not connected, and that they are not on active open files. The bishop is still here. The queen is probably the only most actively placed piece, but it's not really attacking anything, or it would have to be this pawn. And both knights here, as mentioned earlier, are very vulnerable because of the bishop here on f3. Okay, so now Capablanca found a very precise way to combine all these factors. He played c4, and in doing so he is attacking this knight. He's not threatening to take the knight immediately because of the pin here over the c-file, but what he does threaten is to now play rook b8, which would chase away the queen from the c-file, and then the capture c takes d5 would become possible. Okay, now let's first look at some defenses that were not played in the game by Mattison. For instance, what would follow after knight f6? Just removing the knight out of harm's way. Well, then obviously bishop d6 would follow. The queen would be attacked. It would have to go to a5, which is about the only place it can go. But then, of course, it has let go of the defense of the knight on c6 here, and after bishop takes c6, white is clearly winning, being a piece up. Okay, another possibility after c4 would have been a6, to prevent the rook from coming to b5 here. But then white has a very nice tactical shot. He would play rook d5, sacrificing the exchange, e takes d5, and forcing access to the white squares with bishop takes d5, check. And now all of a sudden the focus of the attack will be from the center to the king side, because after the forced king h8, white would play the very strong queen d1, and this threatens queen h5 with an immediate win because of the mating threat here. Notice that black's king is completely locked in also because of the bishop on d5. So let's just imagine that that black would defend against the threat of queen h5 with, let's say, g6. Protecting this square here on h5. But then we can see that this diagonal has opened up. And of course, white would then very much like to put his queen here on a1 when it would be checkmate. Now how can white get his queen to a1 in a forceful way? That is of course by removing his rook here in a forceful way. And the winning continuation in this case would be rook takes f6, which clears the first rank here, but also attacks the knight on c6. And there is no defense left. Okay, now let's go to a third alternative that black could have played after c4. For instance, knight takes f4. But then the in-between rook b5 would be possible, attacking the queen. Now the queen could go to e7, but then after bishop c6, white has regained his piece and is attacking both rook and knight in the corner here. Now notice that this knight here is also en prise. So relatively the best for black would have been to play then knight g6, saving his knight. And now if white would take the rook, then at least black could recapture the knight here on g5. And he would be down the exchange. But after bishop c6, white would have a technically winning position. Maybe this would have been the most tenacious defense for Mattison to play. But, and now we will return to the game, after c4 he played knight d to b4. And he now attacks white's queen. Okay. White now played queen b3. And he now threatens again this bishop d6 move. Also, and we will see that later, he has another threat up his sleeve. So now to prevent this bishop from coming to d6, Mattison played e6, e5, blocking out the bishop. But now Capablanca found another very strong move, exploiting the fact that these two knights here are protecting each other. He didn't care about this bishop on f4 here, but rather played a2, a3. Now if black would have taken this bishop, then Capablanca would have taken this knight. And in doing so he would have attacked the black queen on c5. And the black queen on c5 is also the protector of the knight on c6. But it can go nowhere safe and at the same time defend this knight on c6. So after a move like, let's say, queen e7, bishop c6 would follow, and again white would be up a piece and winning the game. So now we really see the strength of this move, a2, a3. So in the game Mattison played knight a6, but then after bishop c6 was forced to resign the game. Now why did he resign? Let's have a look. For instance, after queen c5, white would break up this diagonal towards black's king with a c4, c5 check. And now there is no defense. If, for instance, bishop e6, then white would simply take that bishop, and after a move like knight c5, there would be a discovered check with knight takes c5, and white is two pieces up. Also after c4, c5 check, king h8, white is winning, because he now has the very elegant knight f7 check. Now rook takes f7 is not possible, of course, because of the attack on the back rank now, mating, rook f8, mate. But also king g8 would not suffice, because then we would get this famous suffocation mate with knight h6, double check, king h8, queen g8, rook takes g8, and finally knight f7, checkmate. So, this game fragment showed us a Capablanca who was well up to the technical task that was demanded from this position. And with that we've come to the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed watching it, and see you next time.